Hey everyone, welcome to the conference. I want to tell you how honored that I feel to be one of the presenters here. And hopefully, what I've prepared for you will bless you. So I heard from my friend Bonnie the other day. She's an amazing published author of many, many books. And she relayed this story the other day, something that happened to her. She said that there was a company that had emailed her, and the company was enticing her to use their artificial intelligence to write a blog post for her website, like 1,500 words, they said. And in this email, they promised that with this artificial intelligence writing the article, and then with just like one click of a button, they would arrange for that Google algorithm to somehow rank her higher and therefore get more people to pay attention to her. And, she said that she considers her ability to write to be a gift from God. And she asked this really great question: why would I pay for some artificial intelligence when wisdom comes from God? And I thought, yeah, I mean, why indeed, right? In in this day and age, we desperately need to hear from God. We need God's wisdom to navigate this really strange world of ours. But the question is, how do we get his wisdom, especially when there's so much competition from the world for the world's wisdom, right? And if the world's wisdom, you know, like that comes to our inbox, right? And the world's wisdom is available to us all the time. What do we do when we feel like God's wisdom is like super elusive, right? So I wonder if you have ever been so fearful that you might make a wrong decision that it kind of paralyzes you and you can't make any kind of decision, right? And you can't make a decision because you know you need God's wisdom and you're waiting for some kind of sign from God to show you what to do, right? Well, if that's ever happened to you, then you know what's at stake here, right? We've got God's wisdom or the world's wisdom. And it seems like the world's wisdom is always um, ready for us. So the question is, which one is going to come through for me in that moment where I think that I need that wisdom immediately, right? So our conference is called A Wise Woman Builds Her House. And of course, this is taken from Proverbs 14:1. The wise woman builds her house, but with her own hands, the foolish one tears hers down. Now, there's any number of ways to approach this topic, this overarching theme of a wise woman builds her house. And what I love about all the speakers that are involved in this conference is that we all take like just a little different approach to this overarching theme. But you know that there's going to be like one unified message that kind of like frames everything, right? And that would be God builds us up and he equips us for whatever it is that he calls us to do. And this includes equipping us with wisdom. And in fact, I suggest that God has already put wisdom in us and that it's actually more readily available for us than what we might have originally thought. So, God's wisdom, we can think of it being available for us when we build a house for him. Okay. So this is the name the name of my particular topic that I'm presenting is building a house for God, embracing the wisdom he has already given you. Okay. Now, I'm going to take you kind of on a journey toward house building, specifically how we build a house for God by partnering with Him to better the world. All right. So, a wise woman builds her house. Well, I think it's appropriate to view the wise woman in that Proverbs as wisdom itself. Okay. And wisdom, as you know, is like a central aspect in all of the book of Proverbs. And then, of course, at other places in Scripture, we have this idea of Lady Wisdom, right? And so it's interesting that wisdom is like um, it's a literary personification of God's own wisdom, Lady Wisdom. And I think right there, that would have made a really interesting topic, right? Why is wisdom personified as a female, as a woman? I mean, besides the fact that the Hebrew word for wisdom, chokmah, is grammatically feminine. So I'm going to be coming at my topic from the belief that wisdom is the very relationship between God and his creation. Okay. And that wisdom is what we're experiencing when we talk about experiencing God. Okay. Now, that's not the only thing, but it's one of the things. So, when you and I walk in God's wisdom, that's when we can bear that image in an accurate image of God. All right. We carry that image of God to the world. That's the world that's like in our sphere of influence. Okay. Our little corner of the world. So to be walking in God's wisdom means that we're walking in his presence. And to have him present, that means to have his wisdom. Okay. Now, I'm going to take us to James 3 to kind of get a sense of what wisdom looks like in real time and not just like the theoretical. So let's read James 3:13 through 18. Who is wise and understanding among you? Let them show it by their good life, by deeds done in the humility that comes from wisdom. But if you harbor bitter envy and selfish ambition in your hearts, do not boast about it or deny the truth. Such wisdom does not come down from heaven, but is earthly, unspiritual, demonic. For where you have envy and selfish ambition, there you find disorder and every evil practice. But the wisdom that comes from heaven is first of all pure, then peace loving, considerate, submissive, full of mercy and good fruit, impartial and sincere. Peacemakers who sow in peace reap a harvest of righteousness. All right. Now, wisdom's traits, they sound a lot like what Paul is telling us in 1 Corinthians 13. Love is patient, love is kind. It does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud. It does not dishonor others, it's not self seeking, it is not easily angered, it keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails. So I want to look at wisdom, but specifically as it relates to you and I building a house for God. Okay. The wise woman builds her house. There's a couple of things I want to share with you in terms of house building in the short time that we have together. There's more ways to build a house and more to each of the subjects that I'm going to bring up, but I'm just going to kind of hone in on a few things. Okay. So to build a house for God, that is how we partner with Him to better the world. All right. Now, I first got this idea of how we can be house builders for God in this way by helping and partner with Him to repair the world. I got that idea when I was working on the lesson for the Torah and the Haftarah portions in the book of Exodus, the Torah portion called Vaya Kahel. So I've been working on editing my manuscript for my book series that's soon to be the first installment is soon to be released um, through Ancient Eyes. So I'm working right now on editing the Exodus book, and so this was kind of fresh in my mind. So let's explore Exodus 35 verses 30 through 35 so that we can see what is involved in house building for God. Okay. Because here we're going to get introduced to two skilled craftsmen of the tabernacle. So let's read that. I have more verses posted up here than what I'm going to read. Um, then Moses said to the Israelites, "See, the Lord has chosen Bezalel, son of Uri, the son of Hur, of the tribe of Judah, and he has filled him with the Spirit of God, with wisdom, understanding, with knowledge, and with all kinds of skills to make artistic designs." Okay. And then it scoots down there to verse 34. He has given both him and Oholiab this ability to teach others, filled them with the skills. Okay. So then in the Haftarah for this particular Torah portion, that's 1 Kings 7:13 through 26. And we are introduced there to a craftsman who is building the temple, and his name is Hiram. So let's read that. King Solomon sent to Tyre and brought Hiram, whose mother was a widow from the tribe of Naphtali, and whose father was from Tyre, and a skilled craftsman in bronze. Hiram was filled with wisdom, with understanding, and with knowledge to do all kinds of bronze work. He came to Solomon and did all the work assigned to him. So, what do you notice in each of those section of verses? What do they have in common? Well, it's said of each of these craftsmen that the work that they would be doing for building the house of God would be done with wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. Okay. And notice that specifically it said that they were filled with wisdom and understanding and knowledge. So from here we can learn that the work of building the house for God that comes from wisdom, understanding, and knowledge, which is given by God. And that's what my friend Bonnie already knew, right? She was rejecting and was able to reject the world's wisdom because she knows that she already has God's. Okay. So we have wisdom, understanding, knowledge. And these are the things that are biblically associated with being filled with the Spirit. These are God's gifts to us. And you and I already have access to wisdom and understanding and knowledge. And this is a key point that I want to make. We already have access to God's wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. So I pulled a couple of verses for us to look at. The first one is 1 Corinthians 12:7 and 8. Now, to each one, the manifestation of the Spirit is given for the common good. To one there's given through the Spirit a message of wisdom, to another a message of knowledge by means of the same Spirit. Ephesians 1:17. I keep asking that the God of our Lord Yeshua Messiah, the glorious Father, may give you the spirit of wisdom and revelation so that you may know him better. Colossians 1:9 and 10. For this reason, since the day we heard about you, we have not stopped praying for you. We continually ask God to fill you with the knowledge of his will through all wisdom and understanding that the Spirit gives, so that you may have a life worthy of the Lord and please him in every way, bearing fruit in every good work, growing in the knowledge of God. So the Jewish sages teach that just as the skilled craftsmen built the tabernacle and the temple with wisdom, understanding, and knowledge, so too God made the universe. The tabernacle, the temple, creation, they were all used um, were fashioned using the same essence, right? And I mean, of course, because each of these are the setting in which mankind can recognize and serve and worship God. And because we are made in God's image and our bodies are like mini temples, our work, like why we're here on earth, this is the arena that we're given by God to transform the world and become partners with Him in the work of recreation. This is what we build. This is the home for God. Now, according to Rabbi Akiva from the second century, God deliberately left the world kind of unfinished so that it could be completed by the work of us in partnership with Him. So, this creative God of ours, He seeks creativity from mankind. And this is what we use to build. So, what kind of house do we build? The kind that brings heaven down to earth. So, what that means is that you have a special job, a special mission to repair the world, partnering with God. And this is something that only you can accomplish. So, this work, this melakah in Hebrew, that's your craftsmanship, it's your creativity, and it's something that only you can do in your corner of the world. So, I think that it's really sort of instructive and kind of telling that this word melakah, um, Hebrew for work, it means um, occupation, it means business, it means workmanship, but it also has the same root as the Hebrew word malak. And malak is used for messenger, for angel, all those who carry a message. Now, in the ancient Near East, the job of the royal messenger was to carry a message from the king. Okay. They came in the name of the king who sent them, and they were given the authority of the king. So when you dealt with the royal messenger, it was as if you were dealing with the king himself. Right? Very serious responsibility. So you and I, as God's messengers to the watching world in our corner of the world, what we build for God is a form of message bearing, if you think about it that way. So then the question we can ask ourselves is, what kind of message does my work say about the goodness of God? And only I can bring that particular message, and only you can bring your particular message. Now, one of my favorite contemporary rabbis, Rabbi Manis Friedman, he shares this great teaching I want to relay to you on the kind of world or home that we build for God. Okay. And he explains that we can make a distinction between mere existence, like all creatures have existence, right? And so we can distinguish between that and what he's calling by the simple term life. Okay. So he says to have existence is like occupying, you're taking up space. And this existence is conditional. Like in order to exist, you have to eat, you have to drink, you have to sleep, you have to breathe, you have to have safety, right? And that these are all the things that other creatures that God created, they all need for survival. But life, what he's calling life, well, that's something else. So God gave mankind something else besides just existence that doesn't depend on outside conditions for survival. Rabbi Friedman calls this life. If you've listened to some of my other teachings, you know that I call this being a day 6 2.0 creature. We're created with many of the same survival systems as other day 6 creatures, but we alone have the breath of God in us, right? That divine spark. So God gave us that divine spark, life. And what is life? Well, Rabbi Friedman says it's the effect that something that exists has on its surroundings, the contribution that it makes to the world. Life is what we do for the kingdom. So Rabbi Friedman goes on to relate that, for example, water and fire, they both have existence, they both take up space, but their contribution are different. So the contribution of fire, or the life of fire, that's not the same as water. Fire gives light, it gives warmth, and it causes things to kind of come apart. Water makes things grow, it keeps things cool, and it can bind things together. And then he also uses stones. He says stones have something to contribute that fire and water cannot. They Stones can provide stability and safety, for example. So, what does this say? Your life, by this definition, is the unique contribution of melakah, of work, that you and God partner to do together in your little corner of the world. This is house building. Do you remember back in James 3? Well, there's something that I want to highlight here, and it starts in verse 14. But if you harbor bitter envy and selfish ambition in your heart, do not boast about it or deny the truth. Such wisdom does not come from heaven, but is earthly, unspiritual, demonic. For where you have envy and selfish ambition, there you find disorder and every evil practice. Okay? So that's a little sobering. James is basically telling us, look, if you're water, don't waste your life trying to be fire or to be a rock. Because if God didn't design you to be fire or a rock, he's not going to partner with you in what you build, is he? So the best that you'll ever do is build something on your own without him. And none of us can survive without him. Our melakah will burn as stubble. So the wisdom to know if you're fire or water or rock or something else, I mean, that comes from God, right? But he's already given this wisdom to you. This is what I want to encourage you with. He's already given you that wisdom. And when you strip away all this thought of what you should do, who you should be, and you get down to the core of who God's created you to be, then you probably already know what you are. And you probably already know what your contribution is. And maybe all that you need to know is that. And all you need to know is that because your work, your contribution, your fireness, waterness, rockness, or whatever, because that comes from God, that you can have the courage and you certainly have God's authority to choose that work, right? Even if someone in your family or someone in society or someone that you worship with or um, someone that you admire because of what they're doing, if those people try to pull you in a different direction, you can have the courage to be that God says for you to be and to do the work that he says for you to do in your corner of the world, right? um, Stay in your lane. I know you're thinking that. That's an overused phrase, but it works, you know. So the skilled craftsmen, you know, the ones who built the tabernacle and the temple, um, they were equipped with wisdom and knowledge and understanding. They were equipped with what they needed to partner with God in building these meeting places between man and God. So what I'm wanting you to do is to understand that you too can be inspired to build the way that God's created you. And that you can know that in doing that, whatever that work is for you, you're bringing heaven to earth through the unique creativity that God has put into you. And that your life, not your existence, but your life, your contribution to the world, when it's done with God, is exactly the home for God that this world needs for you to build. Now, I've purposely not given specific examples of what house building for God looks like. This repair of the world that we partner with God to do, because there's so many different possibilities, and some of them are going to be talked about in some of the other presentations, right? But I want to give you like one general sort of framework to this idea of building a house for God, and it comes from the idea that when you think of house, you think of hospitality, right? So, hospitality that creates a home, does it not? I mean, maybe it doesn't create like a permanent structure for the recipient, but hospitality opens its arms wide and it like invites someone in, right? Hospitality is being present in the moment. So you're not distracted and thinking about other things. You're solely focused on your intended. Okay. I want you to see that that's also house building. Now, we can build person to person, right? So if you have a grieving friend, you can sit with them and just hold space for their grief, right? That's hospitality. That's building a home for their heart, is it not? When you encircle someone in prayer, that's building a home. When you invite somebody into your personal space, it, you know, personal space, that doesn't have to be like your physical home. It doesn't have to be a location, any place other than your heart. When you invite somebody into your heart, that's hospitality. So when we do these things for other people, of course, we do that for God. But there's actually more to this that I want to share. So I say that every time that you call upon God's wisdom in your life, remember the wisdom he's already given you, that's building a home for him. Every time that you include him in decision making, calling forth that wisdom that he's already given you, confident that he's already given it to you, that's creating a space for him. It's creating a home. So every time that you include God's wisdom um, in those moments of your life, the good moments, the bad moments, the lovely moments, the scary moments, when you include him in those moments, you are providing him a home, hospitality. So when you think about it this way, this idea that we're each a mini tabernacle for God, that kind of takes it to another level, right? So how do we tap into this wisdom? That's the, you know, that's the $1 million question. I mean, there's a number of ways, but what I want to share is something that I call mindful awareness of God. Okay, that's how we can tap into his wisdom. So that's the conscious, mindful recognition that his wisdom is present in my life in this moment. It's not in some vague sense of, I think I can call upon his wisdom. I think he will give me wisdom, but it's knowing that his wisdom is right here, right now, that he has put that in me. So then the idea of remembering God in the present moment can be building a house for him, bringing this mindfulness of him into all your circumstances. Now, that's the goal, that's the target, but if you're like me, we need to kind of work up to get there, because our spaces, and that includes the, the space in our mind, is really full of distractions, right? And again, that worldly wisdom is always calling to us. It's getting sent into our email inboxes, and it's enticing us to listen to it instead of this wisdom that God has already given to us. So that's kind of what I mean. We're all kind of on a level playing field. That's all kind of what we're all up against. Um, but I have found that the more that I practice this presence of God, this mindfulness that His wisdom is already in my life, the better I am actually at navigating this really weird world that we live in. And I know that keeping focused like this isn't easy. Neuroscience research actually tells us that it's part of the human experience that we lose focus at times. Um, and that includes the ability to focus on God and this acknowledgement that His wisdom is already here with us. Because it's just part of being human that we lose focus at times, even on those things that are like the most important thing in the world to us. Research actually, I won't go into the details of how the research came to this, but the conclusion is that our minds typically wander 50% of our waking moments on average. Some of us more so than others, some of us less so, right? So when you're praying but your mind wanders, that's normal. That's not a lack of love for God. That's not something to beat yourself up over. When you forget that God's wisdom is right here with you, and you go into like that panicked spiral of doom that we all go into sometimes, don't beat yourself up, because you've only lost focus in that moment, but you can come back to that awareness, right? And here's the thing. God knows this about us. Like he created us, and He knows this propensity of ours to be distracted. And I think that that's one of the reasons why He's given us like the feast days and Sabbaths that He has, because He knows that we will our minds will wander away from Him, and these are like built-in built-in rituals for us to kind of help us to remember to come back, to remember to put our attention back on Him. So I don't think that God's concerned about our distractibility, and neither should you. Yeshua says to us, He says, "Abide in me, remain in me," right? Because He knows we'll shift our focus. So there's no shame in that. We just choose to focus again. We choose Him again and again, and we never give up. We keep returning, right? Now, I think it would be a good thing for us to learn to notice when we've strayed our attention and to bring that attention back. And that refocusing does get easier the more that you practice it. Isaiah 26:3 says, "He will keep in perfect peace those whose minds are steadfast because they trust in Him." So, refocusing back to God is what it means to have a steadfast mind toward Him. It's not never diverting your attention away in the first place. Because our brains are constantly, like we're created this way, to constantly filter out dozens of stimuli at any given moment. And being able to filter these things out helps us to focus on some things while taking other stimuli out of our mind's focus. So, for example, like in this very moment, in order for you to pay attention to me, to focus on my voice, and to focus on the content of my words, you have to have, you have to like take that competing stimuli out of your focus so you can focus it just in on me. So maybe you miss breakfast and your mind is on like a good bowl of oatmeal. Maybe you've got a house full of kids all around you, and that fun noise that only kids can make, that's maybe competing. right? So sometimes this other stimuli wins, right? So in this case, you can always go back and watch this video again, to see what you missed, or you can just move on and never really realize that your attention strayed for just a bit. So we do know that there's many mental and physical actions that will follow what we're paying attention to. So the question that we can ask is, what will I focus my attention on right now in this moment? Okay. So this is kind of like learning to pay attention to what you're paying attention to. Does that make sense? So why is that important? Well, because you can learn to pay attention to the times when you're not paying attention to God's wisdom. Okay? Those times, and you'll know it because that's that's when we feel stressed or we feel anxious, we feel out of sorts. It's like we've lost the signal, so to speak, right? So whatever we focus our attention on, that wires our brain to certain patterns. So, for example, do you do you find that you like tend to always notice the negative in a situation? If so, that is going to influence your actions and your ability to draw from God's wisdom. Do you focus on how you can get through a hard situation by your own strength? Pull yourself up by the bootstraps kind of a person? Well, that will influence your actions, including how willing and ready you are to ask God into the situation, to tap into the wisdom that He's already given you. Now, I know that I needed to motivate when I first started looking into this. I needed to motivate myself to pay attention to what I'm paying attention to. And I did that. What motivated me was to think about, how does my inattention to God affect Him? Okay? So I know how it affects me when I'm trying to have a connected moment with somebody and they're not really paying attention to me, right? Um, have you noticed how you feel when you're talking with somebody and they're listening to you and then they pull out their phone to look at it, right? And from that moment, their attention is divided. I mean, I hate it. I'm sure you do too. We all hate that. Although we maybe are guilty of doing that ourselves. So here's some questions, some what ifs. What if God is calling forth wisdom to you in, in, in far greater ways than what you have thought about before? So, like, more than what you've been paying attention to because you didn't know to pay attention to it. So, what if God speaks to us using signposts that are mediated by the brain and the body, our thoughts and our feelings and our sensations? Because 1 Corinthians 6:9 says our body is a temple. So, what if we can pay attention to God's wisdom better by paying attention to the place where His wisdom lives in us, our mind, our body? So, maybe paying a little bit better attention there is how we can create a space for God, to build a home for Him, to maintain a home for Him. So, whether it's your mind, your body, or another area of your life, I want to encourage you to get out of your usual way of looking at things and ask God about this. Like, ask Him to show you if and what the different ways that He might be trying to um, let you know about the wisdom that He's already given you. And ask Him if some of these ways are how He's been trying to get your attention, your focus back to this wisdom that He's already placed in you. And I pray that the work that you do in this world, in your corner of the world, this partnering that you do with God to repair your little corner, I hope that you can see that that work is building a home for Him. And I hope that you can see that having a more mindful awareness that his wisdom is already in you, that when he's with you, his wisdom comes too. I hope that you can see that this is also an aspect of building a home for him and maintaining a home. When he asks us to build this home for him, maintain this home, he equips us by giving us his wisdom. So I want to thank you for taking the time to be with me today and to focus your attention on what I'm what I'm saying, and to filter out all those other competing things for your attention. Um, and I pray that you're blessed with a greater sense of God's nearness to you, and how that means that his wisdom is already available in your life. So be blessed.